all I've been doing since then is trying to share my message, try to share my experience, and try to avoid making the same mistakes that we made in 2014 when Hamas only got stronger after we bombed them and killed thousands, and we struck them a decisive blow, or that's at least what I thought at the time, but I only saw afterwards that my own government strengthened Hamas.
Okay. Bensi, your line has dropped. We're going to redial you, and we're going to bring you back. We're going to bring you back, okay? So stand by, and we'll bring you back.
The images that everyone is seeing, that I'm seeing, remind me very vividly of that fighting. And frankly, it's my worst fears, because many people, colleagues in the Israeli peace camp, in the Israeli anti-occupation camp, have been warning for so many years, saying that there is no military solution. We can't just manage the conflict and maintain a very, very brutal military regime of control over Palestinians. Right now in Israeli society, there's a debate going on as to whether this war that we're fighting should be against Hamas or should it be against the Palestinian people. And you have members of this current government who have said, since the horrific atrocities that we saw on October 7th against Israeli civilians and the kidnapping of Israeli civilians who are still being held, they have made it clear that they aren't differentiating between civilians and Hamas. On Saturday night, senior member of the coalition, a member of the cabinet, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, and the minister overseeing the West Bank in the Ministry of Defense, said that he doesn't really see a big difference between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas. The Arabs are the same Arabs. So there are many Israelis who disagree with that, and there are many Israelis who are questioning the assumptions and questioning the lies that they've been told for so many years. And maybe it is a majority who has believed the lies that our government has told us. You know, I think that this is an opportunity for partners of mine in the Israeli peace camp. I saw many of my...
Yes? I can hear you.
Well, you know, one of the voices that I've listened to over the years and I've been convinced by is not just the voices of human rights activists, but also the voice of the former head of the Shin Bet, Ami Ayalon, who's the top counterterrorism expert and for 4.5 years in the country. And he said this openly. He said the only way to decisively defeat the terrorism that Hamas represents is through creating an alternative and creating hope. And that means working towards a political solution. And our current government has been fundamentally committed to opposing a political solution and to preventing the creation of a Palestinian state and preventing Palestinian independence. So therefore, that's why I realized that a military alone will not defeat Hamas. And that's why I think that our government needs to be changed immediately.
So let me ask you then as well, because you talk a lot in your op-ed about what you saw in Gaza in 2014. Tell me, because earlier you said you don't believe that the soldiers distinguish carefully enough between civilians and Hamas fighters. What did you yourself experience to make you say that?
Well, you know, in the area that we went, we were told that all the civilians had fled, and that was true for the most part, but it wasn't entirely true. We did find civilians. There was an entire family in the second neighborhood that my unit took over. There was an entire family who stayed behind, and the soldiers, you know, luckily, when they entered the house, they didn't kill them through live fire. They gave them food and water. They guarded them for many days. But when we pulled out, the Air Force flew overhead and bombed the entire neighborhood, and 8 members of that family were killed. I learned this later. So I've seen this with my own eyes, and I'm listening today. I'm listening to my own leaders, including who I mentioned, Bezalel Smotrich, who said he doesn't really differentiate between the Palestinian Authority, which recognizes Israel and wants to negotiate with Israel, and Hamas, which is the terrorist organization that carried out these atrocities. The Arabs are the Arabs. That's what he said on Saturday night on Israeli television. So it's hard for me to believe. I don't believe it. I've seen it with my own eyes. I don't believe that Israel is doing everything in its power to prevent civilian casualties based on the statements of members of the Likud and other members of the coalition. And I think that that's a result of the fact that this government doesn't view the Palestinian people as the future partners for making peace with. And I'm an Israeli, but I'm also an American. And I expect that the American government also not just pays lip service to the idea of pursuing a political solution. You know, settlements are expanding at an incredible rate. Settlers are illegally taking over land, not even according to international law, according to Israeli law. They're going out and they're shooting at Palestinian civilians, and there's no, with impunity, there's no real enforcement against them. And so I think our international partners and allies need to take a stance on the side of the Israelis who are demanding political solution and are demanding differentiation, and that our government makes sure not to harm and kill innocent civilians.
Are you not worried about what you're saying to me publicly now, being accused of siding with the enemy and the kind of things that are getting some Israelis in trouble?
You know, it's a risk that I have to take for the future of the people of Israel. You know, siding with the enemy would be ironic for my government to accuse me after my government, in order to prevent a Palestinian state, actually facilitated the transfer of hundreds of millions of dollars to Hamas and preferred to bolster Hamas and to delegitimize the Palestinian Authority and Palestinian human rights organizations. They designated Palestinian human rights organizations as terrorist organizations. They categorized Palestinian diplomatic initiatives as as diplomatic terrorism. But Hamas, they facilitated the transfer of hundreds of millions of dollars. And they also crushed Palestinian hopes of independence, which also fed the fuel of Hamas, because that's what Hamas is, the enemy of peace. And when our government committed itself to preventing a peace process and preventing negotiations, they were actually helping Hamas.